Welcome back to the garage, everybody. 30th of January, about 3:30 in the afternoon. Couple goals for this evening. One is to get the bottom of the bonnet here in epoxy primer. I hate this on the stand like this. It just makes me nervous that I'm going to bow or bend or whatever that whole crown there. It just kind of makes me sick. Thankfully, this portion, the spine, is what I've kind of taken to calling it. That provides some strength in there, so hopefully that'll not be too bad. I did do some cleaning on this already, did some prep work, so I don't think I'll have to clean it too much, but I do want to get that epoxy primer tonight. Another goal for this evening is to get this repair finished up here on the tail light assembly. I'll show you how I go about doing that. And then the final part, along with the painting the bottom of the bonnet, is I want to get the rest of this bulkhead all cleaned up and everything like that as far as the vertical portion goes, and get that in shot with epoxy primer. The goal there being to get it into red Raptor liner this weekend. I don't know if I'm going to paint the shelf or not. I may just do that whole general area again, just to kind of call it good. But it's not necessarily do I care if I get the shelf portion done. So that's the plan ahead for this evening. It's supposed to get stupid cold again tomorrow here, not anywhere near what it's like in the Midwest. Thank God that's not me, but I'm thinking those guys are hurting right now. But I want to get the painting done while it's still kind of warm in here and the heat can keep up. So that's the goal for this evening. Got the inside of the bonnet sanded down. I used a 180 grit sandpaper. I used the mouse hand palm sander thing. I used some red scuff pads. I used pretty much everything that I could to get it scuffed up enough. I'm a little concerned about the adhesion properties, but this is the way that I did the inside of the car, and this is the way that I've done some of the bonnet on the inside here, and I'm not having adhesion problems with it now. So I'm hoping that the epoxy will hold on. I do need to tape it off in some spots that I don't want paint to run out of, that I may put it on heavy. I got the holes here for the emblems and the lettering. I got them taped over so that the epoxy doesn't drip out of that. If I put it on too heavy, I don't want it to run out onto the other side of the bonnet. I'm also probably going to tape off some of the headlight stuff, and just probably don't have to do it because I'm going to sand it all down anyway, but I'm trying to prevent runs more than I'm just trying to prevent overspray here. So there's a couple more places. I'll get these holes here too for the latches. But otherwise, that again, in the absence of wax and grease remover, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Hopefully it'll work. And now I think instead of working the front of the bulkhead there, I'm going to move on to this patch and get something made here and get that welded in. Got the taillight assembly here, and if you want an example of poor workmanship on parts, you can see that hole right there, not the very topmost one, but the one right underneath of it, and there's another hole underneath there. Those are the mounting holes for the tail lamp into that hole there and that hole there, and you can see that the rubber on the back doesn't align with that at all. So I'll have to poke holes through that. Also, you've got like two larger holes. I'm not really sure what those are for, but in the piece of rubber here, you can see those two little raised spots, and I assume they're supposed to fit into those two little raised spots. And instead of the hole in the center being above those little raised spots, it's below it. So you can see here that it's below. So yeah, not the greatest. And this is an original tail light assembly here. This is not a reproduction at all. This came off of either the black car or Dorothy here. I'm not sure which. It's in good enough shape that I'm not going to buy new ones. But you can see that you will suffer a little bit with aftermarket parts. Alright, so what I've done here is I just popped some cheesy holes in the back here. I didn't do a real good job of it. So I'm just going to screw this down on this mounting plate here, just so that I know that it's going to fit properly, so that when I go to cut my patch, I'll cut the patch properly. I don't want to make it too messed up and not have a flat patch, so I need to test it to make sure that it's going to be proper. Alright, this is kind of a real pain in the rear, but I got the first little portion of patch done. Not beautiful by any means, but I think I'm going to go ahead and tack that in and just kind of slowly work my way up and around. and then thank Filler for the repair, I think. Alright, that's kind of tacked in. Not horrible. It'll need some work to kind of mold it in a little bit. Probably should have trimmed that off a little. But so I'll get that kind of lined up here and then start making other patch pieces. It's about 5:30. I don't want to wait too much longer before I get to paint. Paint's more important to me than this right now. So we'll keep working here and see what we do. So I got this other section of patch fitted up, ready to go in. Obviously a pretty good size gap there, pretty good size gap there. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about that yet. I'll try to fill with weld metal, I guess. Those are big, but anyway, I'm going to go ahead and then weld this up, get it tacked in at least, and then start to switch over to the bonnet to get that ready to go into epoxy. I think I've showed you this kind of method before. It's not really a trick, but the obviously with the body all on epoxy here, unless I want to grind some paint away, it's hard to find a good spot of bare metal. So what you can do, hopefully if your bolt holes are clean, I got a nice shiny new bolt in there screwed into a pre-threaded hole. This is the support bar, I guess you could call it, for the rear bumper, and that gives you a good ground there. That way you don't have to grind off any paint and you still get the solid ground for your MIG welder. Alright, so like I said, I'm going to leave it at that. Also get some paint inducing and get the bonnet cleaned up with wax and grease remover. That's about the step I'm on. But I still got some sanding and everything to do. It's about 6:05, so I want to get the paint going and get the bonnet cleaned up. Paint's induced, bonnet's cleaned up. I put some tape on there just kind of incidentally, just to prevent, major overspray. I'm not that concerned, again, that I get it overspray on there. Probably going to get some on the fender here, that's okay. Some around in here. But otherwise, it's going to be a little bit of a pain in the rear. I decided not to tape these up so I can get in that way and try to spray into the headlight bucket there and just do my best in here. This is probably easily the most complicated nooks and cranny place, even compared to the bulkhead with all the supports and everything, just because of the reach here that I have to do. At least everything was a foot away from me here. I got some stuff that I'm gonna have to stretch over, so I'm gonna do a couple dry runs here, but get 2 coats down. It's about 7 o'clock, so just not enough room in here to bring the front of the body in and get that painted as well. So hopefully I'll get this in 2 wet coats here and then continue on. Easily the most challenging paint job I've done so far. And I'm just trying to get coverage. I'm not trying to make it look pretty, so I can't imagine how much fun it's going to be when I go to paint this red. Anyway, so definitely missed a couple spots. One that was obvious, I missed this ridge right here. You can't tell too much except for the fact that it's not shiny. I missed that little trim, that little piece of the wheel arch there. And then if you look, it's kind of hard to see. You can see it back there pretty good. You can see that darker mark. Underneath the wheel arches, like I would have suspected, it's just you can't get the gun under there. And it's obviously painful to do, but not too bad underneath in there. And I went through the headlight buckets. Could have done a better job up there in the upper left-hand corner. So I'm in my 30-minute cure. I mixed a bit more paint because I used most of it. Another thing that I did is I took a piece of advice from Wayne Tate, who's on the my favorite forum. I'm not sure if he watches my videos or not, but he had mentioned using kind of a point stream for the gun instead of the big fan, turning down the fan control pretty good, so you get more of a straight shot, size of a the size of a baseball or something like that. And I tried that up in these corners and everything, and it seemed to do okay. So it definitely helped me get some coverage in there. But so I got some more paint inducing. That's got 30 minutes. I've got this guy that's going to go for about 30 minutes once the paint's done inducing here, about 10 of 8 or so. I'll get my second coat down, and then regardless of kind of how it looks, I'm going to call it good at that point and and we'll see. Again, 7-day window on this, so if I decide that it needs a third coat for coverage, then I've got time to do that. Working the final patch here. Might not be the smallest one I've ever made, but it's pretty close. So just a little spear looking thing, and I'll get that tacked in. These spots down here are just too small. I can't really get anything in there. Can't get the magnet in there because of lack of access. So I'm just gonna have to carefully try to fill that with weld metal. I'll fill some of this stuff in. I'm not gonna probably finish it up at all, but I'm waiting on the paint here to dry still. Got about another 10 minutes on that, and then I'm gonna get for the second coat, but I wanted to show you this real quick. All right, well, I decided to go ahead and finish the welding up. Not my worst hack job, but well, we'll just say I'm glad that it's gonna be kind of disguised by the tail light anyway. So that's got to clean that up obviously, but right now I'm going to get to the second coat of epoxy primer, and then I'm going to call it a night. 2 wet coats. Second coat went better than the first. Lessons learned, I guess, and a little bit heavier of a spray. Still got some dry spray in spots that I'm not real crazy about. Excuse me, but I don't see anywhere near as many little red spots, especially in the wells there. There's a couple places where you can maybe see that it discolors a little bit, but I got paint way up in that upper corner. Way up in there, just can't get in there at all. Maybe I'll reach in there with a paintbrush at some point. But all in all, happier with the way that the second coat went based off how I felt on the first. So next visit, my intention with this will be now to get the wells here in Raptor liner, tape all that stuff off and get that in Raptor liner, and go from there. As far as the rest of the body went, I got the this area repaired but not cleaned up. I showed you that, and I didn't get any of the front bulkhead, so that'll be for next time. See you in a second. Good afternoon, everybody. A little surprise visit here. It's Saturday, about 3 in the afternoon. Over to do just one thing today, and that's to get seam sealer on the seams here inside the wheel arches and down this seam as best as I can anyway underneath. So I've got my caulking gun thing here of the Dynatron seam sealer. This is the gray color. Didn't really matter to me what color. So I'm going to hit that stuff, and then I got to wait about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to take the paintable stuff and hit it with the paintable stuff, just like I did inside the interior. And again, this is in preparation, especially in the wheel arches here, for doing the Raptor liner. I want to be able to do that tomorrow, and I don't want to waste some time waiting for the seam sealer to dry and all that stuff, so I figure this is a good way to try to get ahead of the game a little bit. If you can see in the shadows there and everything like that, you can kind of see where there's some difference in leveling. So I think I had mentioned that I did not intend to use build primer on the inside of this, but I've got some areas that I did take down to bare metal and other areas that I did not. So just to try to cover that stuff up, I think I am going to go ahead and hit the interior here with build primer, but I'm not going to do any blocking or anything like that. I'm just going to build primer it just to try to get some of that stuff leveled out, and then take a scuff pad and scuff it up. Again, not trying to really, you know, make it look pretty or anything like that. We'll see. I haven't decided on that or not. But I'll go ahead here real quick and get the seam sealer on, and that, like I said, that's going to be about it. All right, got the Dynatron stuff on there, went pretty well. I like this stuff. This is the AC Delco stuff that I used for the body, that I used the brushable on top of. I don't like this stuff as much. The Dynatron stuff goes down much smoother. It's a little easier to play with. It just feels like a better product. Got it all the way down the seam of the wheel arch, underneath the wheel arch, I should say, all the way down to where the fender and the bonnet kind of connect to each other, and then in the wheel arch itself. So now I'm going to give that about 30 minutes here and let that get a little tacky and somewhat cured up, and then go over it with brushable seam sealer, and that'll be it. So the seam sealer should be dry by now, cured up. So now I'm going to take this brushable seam sealer. You can see it here, the automotive brushable seam sealer by Evercoat. I've used this before on the body. I like this thing. I like this stuff. So I'm going to try to show you how it goes on there. It doesn't go on too bad, and it's just kind of like painting, except it's pretty thick. Let's see if I can get it in the shot here so you can kind of see how thick that is, hopefully, by me moving it around. So it's not terrible, but it's definitely not liquidy, so you just have to, you know, kind of work it a little bit. I am using an acid brush here to apply it One of those little cheesy acid brushes you can pick up like, I don't know, 50 of them or something like that from Harbor Freight for $2. They're pretty cheap. Just convenient to use, and they're skinny, so I don't have this big long swath of seam sealer going down. But that's it. So I'm just going to go through now and get the rest of this thing painted up and move on from there. About 10 after 4, short and sweet. Got the brushable seam sealer on there for covering all of the stuff where the other seam sealer was. Again, this is just kind of added protection for me. Not probably didn't really need to do this, but I wanted to. I also got fiberglass. Now that I got epoxy on it, I got fiberglass on a couple of my weld repairs. That guy there, where I had repaired the hole that was blown out from the bonnet stay. I'm using the hydraulic lift kit, so that uses that hole right there, and one of the holes in the same spot but over there. And then I got those little welds right there. The rest of the welds I've already gotten, and that's about it. So tomorrow I will come in and get right in on the Raptor liner and build primer. Welcome back, everybody. About 8:30 in the morning. Time to get the bonnet here in Raptor liner in the wheel arches and build primer on the inside, just to take care of some of the leveling issues with the paint. Again, I just got done all this seam sealer yesterday, so seconds ago, according to you watch it. Got to sand off some of this fiberglass so I can get that out of the way. Go ahead and tape it off. I still haven't decided if I'm going to do the Raptor liner or the build primer first yet, so it'll be a surprise for us both. So I've decided to do the Raptor liner first. You can see I've got everything all crazily taped off and newspaper and everything. I just am trying to avoid any overspray, obviously, and all the holes are taped off and everything. I still have to sand everything down, so it's not that critical, but I'm just trying to stay in the habit of keeping everything clean. So I'll get the Raptor liner on here and I'll let that cure up. And in the meantime, I am going to put some filler up in the nose in there just to take the edge off of the nastiness that's in there from all the body work and all the hammer and dolly work and the stud pulling and everything like that. Not trying to make that look real pretty up there. I'm just going to try to clean it up a little bit because I think it'll be pretty obvious when the bonnet's up. Again, just a light skim of filler just to fill in the nastier spots. And otherwise, the Raptor liner, again, I have these directions here that give me a mixing by weight, which is what I intend to do. The milliliters down here is 125 milliliters, or excuse me, 250 milliliters. I think I'm going to mix half of that. The problem with this stuff, unlike the build primers and the epoxy primers, you have to wait about an hour in between coats, and that's also the pot life, so that's inconvenient, because right about the time you're ready to put on your second coat, the stuff that you've mixed is seized up or cured up. So I'm going to mix 125 milliliters and do my math here to convert it out with the coating, the hardener, and the max tint. And then I'm also going to reduce it a little bit to make it flow a little bit easier and have a nice non-rough texture like I had underneath. And I'll go into how I'm mixing that here in a moment and getting that ready to go. So I'll get the paint booth all set up here and get ready. There's no induction time for this stuff. Once you mix it, you go. And I'll come back here in a second and show you the mixing. So here's the U-Pull technical data sheet. Now there's a couple of these floating around, and not all of them have the data sheet that has the weight on it. So if you do want to mix by weight and you're not using the Raptor liner and a standard bottle stuff, you need to go look for this. Just do a Google search, mixing Raptor liner by weight or something like that. But anyway, so it gives you the milliliters that you want to mix, and then in grams how much of each you're going to do. So I'm only going to make up 125 milliliters because I think that's probably going to end up being a little bit too much, and I don't want to, not that I got a lot of this stuff, I don't really care about wasting it, but 125 milliliters on the cup here is looks to be just over about 4 ounces, which should be more than enough to get a coat. Like I said, it's probably going to be too much. So I'm going to mix 105 grams of the Raptor liner stuff itself, 30 grams of the hardener, and then tint it with about another 13 grams, and then I'm also going to reduce it to thin the texture out a little bit using just regular urethane reducer that I picked up from SPI that I would use with their other systems. And I'm using their base coat medium red, the same stuff that I'm painting the car with, as the tint. So I'll mix all that stuff up by weight, and like I said, there's no induction time or anything like that, so pretty much when it's ready, I'll go right in and shoot it. I have my handy dandy trusty purple gun from Harbor Freight here that you can see that I drilled out to a 2mm tip. It requires a 1.6 to 2 millimeters if you're going to spray with an HVLP. I did not want to use my good gun for this, and you can't get tips as far as I could ever figure out for the Harbor Freight gun, so I just used my drill press and drilled the thing out to about 2 millimeters. Going to use about 29 pounds of air pressure for this, going off of my notes from last time, and spraying it about 6 inches away or so. If I remember right, stuff goes pretty well. The one problem that I did have last time is this little vent cap up here was getting clogged on me because the stuff is pretty thick and it wouldn't spray and I couldn't figure it out. I've got that enough painting experience now under my belt to go ahead and not do that again. So now I've got the cup set up over there, and I'm just going to go ahead and mix it. So 105 grams of the coating, and when you're doing this, make sure you zero out the scale for the cup. Alright, now that one exactly 105 grams because I am that good. Alright, got the hardener down. One nice thing that I do like, I think I pointed this out before, that the Raptor U-Pole does, is these little spouts here. You kind of lift and you pull that out and it gives you a little recessed spout in there. Unlike the cans that I get from SPI, especially the gallon ones, which are a real pain to pour. I've wasted quite a bit of stuff down the side of the can and everything. So you can see it just gives you a little pour spout there. It's kind of nice. Alright, so I need 30 grams of this stuff. So I zero the scale out again. Alright, 29 grams, close enough. Alright, now I'll do only 13 grams of reducer. And I think what I'm going to do here is pour it in a separate cup and then pour the reducer into a separate cup here and then pour that into there just to make it a little easier, and then pour whatever I don't use back. Alright, so zero it out again. 13 grams. Alright, a little over on that one. Alright, now I got my red tint here, the Raptor, or excuse me, the Southern Polyurethanes Median Red. See how nice and bright that stuff is? It's gonna look nice. Alright, zero it out here, and I'm just gonna dip. I got a little, medicine cup here, whatever you want to call it. Just gonna dip that in the paint, got the glove on, and pour it in there out to 15. Or excuse me, out to 13. Alright, got that. Mix it up. The mixing instructions, this stuff is designed to be mixed in the can here, in the bottle. But when you use an HVLP gun and use the tint, you don't have enough room if you want to reduce it. And I didn't want to mix that much anyway, so it does tell you to shake vigorously for at least 2 minutes. So I'm going to mix this up pretty good here. Alright, and you can see the consistency of it. At least I hope you can. So that's, somewhat thick. Thicker than the build primer. Alright, so that's mixed up. Again, that's as much as I got there. I'm not going to have probably enough because the pot life is 60 minutes. So I'll double check my gun settings. Again, 29 pounds, greater than about 6 inches. I do have to do the flow on it, so I got to do that yet. But I'm going to bring that in. I won't record it for you while I paint it, but I'm going to bring that into the booth here in a second and get it down. I'll show you what it looks like after the first coat. First coat of Raptor liner is down. There's definitely needs a second coat. It doesn't appear to be quite as textured as the last time, so I don't know if just a little bit more reducer in there or what. Not that doesn't really bother me. Just noticed that it wasn't as textured. Maybe the second coat will be. Definitely needs a second coat though. It's hard to get in here with the gun, so there's some spots that are a little light. And up inside the seams, which you can barely see, I did have to take a paintbrush in there. I'm pretty sure I remember doing that on the rear wheel arches as well. just because you can't get the gun angled around enough. But anyway, looking pretty good. A lot less fumes. I think I mentioned that. A lot less fumes in here from that stuff. A lot less volatile, so there's almost no smell in here right now at all. I have had the fan running here, but it's a lot more user-friendly when it comes to that stuff. So I got about another 20 minutes or so on the cure. I got to make up a whole new batch. That 125 milliliters was about the perfect amount to mix for that. I had a little bit left over that I was able to get with the paintbrush. I'll probably do the paintbrush first this time instead of last. In the meantime here, I'll figure something else out to do. All right, second coat is on. And obviously I got the newspaper out of there. Second coat went on a little bit better as far as the texture went. A little bit more used to what I was seeing on the bottom of the car. So yeah, I'm happy with the way that it went. I love the color, obviously, when it gets on there. It looks, you know, nice pop. So that's, I'm happy with it. And I didn't do the paintbrush this time just because I got pretty good coverage in there. So everything's all cleaned up. I put some filler there, a little bit of filler there, and I think I put some back here. Yep, a little bit of regular filler there just to get those areas kind of smoothed off a little bit. I'll get that sanded down here, grab a bite to eat, get that stuff sanded down, and then look at getting the rest of the bonnet into build primer. Got all of the filler sanded down for the most part. Came out all right. A couple places that I went through to bare metal, but not enough for me to get worried about where I'm going to re-epoxy everything. So if I can swing this around here, I kind of looks okay. Just smooth it out again. I didn't really care to get, you know, it all pretty and everything. If I had done a little bit prior thinking a little bit better, I would have probably put build primer on this first, because now what I'm afraid of is I obviously want to protect the area here of the Raptor liner and want to tape that off before I would paint it. Well, I'm afraid if I tape it off and put the tape on there that it's going to rip the Raptor liner off until it's had a good chance to cure. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to at least wait until the next visit before I get this guy in build primer. So I'm going to switch over to the body and clean up the tail light area here and get that all nice and pretty. Got that smoothed up. There's a pretty big ridge right here inside of it. You can kind of see that, I think, in the profile there. It dips in pretty well. And again, I think that's just because this whole thing got kind of slammed down. That's since this piece here was reinforced because this backing plate area is pretty thick, so that when it nailed here, this whole piece bent in, and right behind that backing piece in here is where it's going to start to sink in to allow it to bend in. So there's a good crease there. I'm not sure that I'm going to really be able to do anything with that. I can't get behind it. That's a lot of body filler to put in there though to make it flat. But got other problems going on down here. But now I got it mostly down to bare metal, and I don't want to put filler over the bare metal. So I've got to re-epoxy this thing anyway. So there's going to be a couple steps there. What I think I'm going to do now, go back to the front, get the front prepped. If you remember, I was hoping to get this area into Raptor liner. Not going to happen today, but I'm going to continue on, get this sawhorse moved out of the way a little bit. I got a lot of fiberglass going on down there. Get that fiberglass taken care of with my palm sander and stuff like that, and then look at maybe I can get this in reapplied with epoxy. Maybe, we'll see. So here's the driver's side rear wing. Nothing surprising there. It looks pretty much just like the passenger side did. Bunch of low spots in it, and then this really bad, horrible spot down here where I did the fender repair not very well. Unfortunately, just based on the time it is right now, it's about 2:30, and how much time it's going to take me to get it done, and everything else that I'm not going to be able to get the bulkhead back into epoxy today, so that's going to put a little damper on getting Raptor liner up here. But so be it. Not gonna rush it. So I still got to scuff it all up. I've started it, but I want to hit it again and do other things. All right, everybody, that's it for me for the weekend. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Nice to see the Bonnet getting into the Raptor liner. It's always that pop of color. Always kind of motivates me. I got to get the rest of it in build primer yet. Going to have to do that before I move on to Raptor linering the front bulkhead. I just don't have the room in the paint booth for both of them to be in there. So I'll go back to the Bonnet, get that done, get that out of there and out of the way, and move on to the body. I don't have a dog in today's big game. Can't say Super Bowl, I guess, because the NFL's got that copyrighted. They don't make enough money as it is. But even though I am in New England, I don't like the Patriots at all. So go Rams. Cheers.